respond to Mr. Garcia's suggestions about improving the relationship and the government-to-government relationship with the tribes in this context, on how that might work and how we can make it work?
Certainly, the plan, as you know, makes many recommendations, including a number that Mr. Garcia spoke about, including for example, the Office of Tribal Affairs at the FCC, seat on the USF Joint Board, and so forth. And we look forward to implementing those, and would be happy to. Our Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau will be implementing those recommendations, and I would be happy to have them get back to you with further information about how that's proceeding. And we've also recently made public our implementation schedule, which has the dates and quarters of addressing a number of those recommendations on it.
Well, that's encouraging, and if we can help you at all, let us know. We appreciate
Thank you.
that. We think that's very important. Mr. Turner, I wanted to ask you about FCC authority in light of this case that came down. The FCC has identified several areas that could be impacted of this that people may not think of, including cybersecurity efforts, universal service reform, access for disabled Americans, and consumer privacy. There's a whole list of things that could be affected. If the FCC does nothing in response to this decision, what will happen to the FCC's ability to advance those policy goals?
It's cast into serious doubt. I think if you look at the statute and look at how the statute was developed, Congress at the time clearly treated and wanted to treat the wires that bring us these services differently from the services themselves, and this was the heart of 230B. Hands-off approach to the internet services, but a light regulatory touch where needed on the wires. And I have a lot of trust in the deliberative wisdom of Congress and the shelf life of these laws, because they're based on principles like universal service, non-discrimination, interconnection, competition, and reasoned deregulation. The path Congress gave the FCC for deregulation was Section 10. Chairman Powell chose to do a different path through this redefinition process, and I think, in the words of Justice Scalia, this was sort of a Mobius strip type of reasoning that ignored the statute. I think Chairman Powell thought he could stand up all the other principles of interconnection, universal service, non-discrimination, disability access, all of that on this ancillary authority theory, and the court case has shown that is not going to be able to be the case. So the move towards reclassification doesn't have to be seen as a radical move. It simply will be a move that puts the FCC's regulatory framework back in harmony with the law, and I guarantee you it will come with some type of heavy forbearance on all the rules that are intended to apply to monopoly telephone networks. They certainly will not be applied to broadband networks, and we must remember that today the enterprise broadband market that serves the biggest businesses in the country is currently regulated under Title II, and that's one of the most competitive markets, and they're not screaming for deregulation, and there's heavy investment going on there.
Dr. Eisbeck?
If I could just jump in very quickly and say, at least with respect to the net neutrality regulations that are proposed, the non-discrimination provisions are not less restrictive on broadband than what was put in place on telephone networks in the past. They are more restrictive. The non-discrimination provisions that were in place on telephone networks in the past permitted just and reasonable discrimination. The proposed net neutrality regulations explicitly reject that approach and say there will be no discrimination of any kind. To suggest that the private sector could have any confidence that the regulations that will be imposed under a Title II classification are less restrictive than what have been imposed in the past is just violated by the proposed rules we have in front of us today.
Well, I just point out that I think it's even a dicier gamble to have any confidence that if we don't do something about net neutrality, there won't be marketplace efforts to restrict access to content. And I think it is clear we need action on here, and I appreciate Mr. Turner's views in this regard. Thank you.